All right. Welcome again. For those who are just joining, I'm Rebecca LeBove with the city's Housing and Revitalization Department. This is our program compliance information meeting for the July 25 NOFA for affordable housing. Go into this first slide here. So in this NOFA, there's a total of $10 million available in gap funding. This is $5 million each in the multifamily development category, and then the permanent supportive housing category, which is for projects that meet the specific definition of supportive housing identified in the NOFA, which you'll hear more about later in the presentation. So for the Affordable Housing Development Program, the maximum awards per project are important to note here. So for projects that are applying to the October 9% LIHTC round from MISHDA, there's a $1 million maximum for those projects. For all other projects, there's a $3 million maximum award per project. There's also two other things to note here in this maximum award category is that we're looking for no more than $5 million in total applications per developer. So for developers who are participating on multiple applications, there's an overall limit to the amount of funding that can be applied for.
All right.
So yeah, this is I just wanted to turn over and introduce Naomi, who I'm sorry if I cut you off. Naomi Beasley Porter oversees our multifamily affordable housing team on the underwriting team.
No worries. Thank you, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. So I want to just quickly run through our timeline. Again, our NOFA is available on our website on the housing development page. It was published on the 21st. We had a successful pre-submission meeting and are in the midst of holding pre-application project review meetings for individual projects that are that have intention to submit for this NOFA round. Those should be ending this week. And we have passed the date to sign up for those. NOFA submissions are due on September 2nd at 11:59 p.m. via the Neighborly portal. And then we will have a presentation again today on the Neighborly application process. And then threshold approval letters for projects that that are submitted and pass threshold will be issued by September 25th. For those projects that intend to submit for the 9% LIHTC, those letters will be issued between September 22nd and 25th in time for the submission. For projects that are intended to for projects that are not intended to come into our pipeline, but may request a support letter. Please ensure that you had participated in scheduling the pre-application review meeting. In the event that you did not, please email hrdnofa@detroitmi.gov, and we can see if there's opportunity to be a little bit flexible with that. Commitment for those projects that pass threshold, commitment level documents are due October 6th at 11:59 p.m. via the Neighborly portal, with conditional awards being made sometime in December. I just want to reiterate, for those that are applying this round, every item that you would like to be considered for review for the NOFA has to be submitted via Neighborly by the respective due dates. We will no longer be able to be flexible in their submission deadlines, missed final submissions on your application, taking additional emails after submission deadlines with updated pro formas and updated LOIs and missing application documentation. Please be sure to have full and thorough applications that you have submitted via Neighborly by the respective deadlines for consideration for scoring, for review and scoring. At this time, I'm going to pass it over to Larry Katrinar
Good morning, everyone. Larry Katcharard, Director of Housing and Development Underwriting in HRD. Thank you, Naomi. I wanted to run through a couple of updates to make sure you note them when you're reviewing the NOFA for this round. We have updated certain categories and certain scoring points, so just want to run through those quickly with you and make sure you take a look at those as you're going through the application. Right. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the emerging developer criteria and requirements. You can find these. We're actually on page 9, and the scoring for this category is on page 41 of the NOFA. And the emerging developer, the HRD, we like to create an opportunity for new developers to get some additional points so that we can expand our developer pool. And this is the idea similar to Mishta's QAP, where there's a partnership formed between an emerging developer and a more experienced developer, so that emerging developer can get the points to get tax credit awards, but also sort of learn the process and have someone mentoring them in growing their organization to develop hopefully more affordable housing in the city. So this is for development teams that have not previously done more than 3 low-income housing tax credit transactions prior to the NOFA. So some of the changes that we made or updates is it now allows organizations that have completed a Capital Impact Partners EDI program training or a similar training type program to meet the real estate development requirement. We do look for the emerging developer to have some real estate experience generally, either having done some low-income housing tax credits or just real estate development in the past. So we're now acknowledging that training program should meet that qualification. So you can, again, go into the NOFA, you can see all this. I'm just going to sort of highlight some of the items this morning. So we also want to make sure that the emerging developer organization is not related to or doesn't have a connection to the experienced developer. We don't want the experienced developers. This program is intended to help the emerging developers that are true emerging developers that want to do affordable housing in the city. We don't want to have like an experienced developer sort of create a related party entity that becomes their emerging developer partner on the property. So you'll see some language that we've sort of cleaned up around that. We do want to see a summary of the emerging developer's role, and that they will join all meetings, and that the experienced developer will join all meetings for the project. Again, to make sure we're seeing that mentoring process taking place. We have had some experience where the emerging developers were not always coming to the meetings, and it's harder to learn the process and gain the experience if you're not attending the meetings. And we're looking to see a 5-year business plan on how the emerging developer is planning to develop more affordable housing in the city. Again, just to see that the emerging developers, how we can support them with their plans going forward and have that information. And of course, we want to see that the emerging developer has at least a 25% ownership interest in the general partnership that controls the real estate. So as the emerging developer, again, pages 9 and 41 of the NOFA. So please take a look at that. Also wanted to mention that we have updated, there's a new targeted multifamily housing area map in the NOFA this round. The previous map was quite a while ago. I forget exactly the year that it was from, but we have a new map. It's got some slightly different defined areas and things, and hopefully more projects will now fall within the targeted multifamily housing area map for those points. Other updates that we've made is in some of the scoring criteria that's in Appendix G of the NOFA, specifically in the alignment with city goals category. For priority projects, we've added the preservation. Actually, we've just added some additional items. I'm just going to list all of the items that priority projects, which projects can qualify for this. So the preservation of currently affordable housing, or which could be regulated housing or naturally occurring affordable housing. We've always had that one. That one's still there. Permanent supportive housing, had that. That's still a city priority. The rehab or redevelopment of public housing, I think that was in our NOFA last round. We've got now a priority project that says 50% or more of affordable units are restricted at or below 50% AMI. That's a priority of City Council to have deeply targeted affordable units. So we've got that as a priority now. The project is part of a HUD Choice Neighborhood program. That is a new item. We have more choice neighborhood projects in the city, so we wanted to capture that. And again, if it's a historic building in a historic district or can qualify as historic, we've had that in the past. That's still a priority project. So check those out. That's on page 42 in the NOFA, the scoring, so you can see which projects we prioritize. And then also on page 43, we've got the mixed income neighborhoods. We've updated and refined that definition a little bit. The intent or the goal here is to incentivize development of affordable housing in areas that have higher incomes in the city, so that we can develop more mixed income, as definition, or as the name says. So we've refined that now to say that if the majority of the units of the project are income restricted at an average of 60% of the area median income or below, and the project is located in a census tract that has 50% or more of the households with area median incomes of 80% of the area median income or above, that would qualify, that projects that meet that criteria would qualify. And there's a link in the NOFA that lists the census tracts that qualify for these points. So again, page 43 of the NOFA, and you'll see that link there. You can get to it and see if your project is located in that census tract. We've also got the additional affordability 2 points. We've added 2 points where projects, if you have deeper targeted affordability, again, that focuses City Council for deeper affordability. We're now awarding 2 additional points if projects have 25% or more of their affordable units are restricted at 40% of the area median income or below. So again, trying to drive that incentive toward more affordable, deeply affordable units in our program. And then we also referred to, or as Naomi mentioned, we've got the application now is through our new software program. It's Neighborly instead of the previous systems that we've used at the city. So I did want to note that there was a pretty substantial training on the Neighborly application process, how to get in, how to sign in. And hopefully many of you were at the pre-submission public meeting. There was a pretty extensive training. There'll be some training again today, but there was that training at that meeting. A recording of that meeting is now posted on the HRD website. So you should check that out if you were for any reason not able to join that initial pre-submission public meeting. You should check out that recording, because I think it may have a little bit longer training than you're going to get today. So I just want to make sure you knew that was out there. Good. So with that, Naomi, if you want to advance the slide, we'll just do a quick look at our agenda today. We are going to have our first topic will be the environment. We've got sort of two sections of the agenda today. The first section will have environmental labor standards and Section 3 requirements. And then we'll stop and pause. And if you have any specific questions related to those presentations, we'll have an opportunity for 15 minutes or so of questions for that. And then we'll go on to our second group of presentations. And then at the end of the meeting, we will have 20 minutes available for, again, just follow-up questions or questions that general questions you may have on the NOFA or any other questions from the presentations. So with that, I think I'm going to hand it over to Penny Dwynen from our environmental compliance department. Penny?
Hello, everybody. I am the first one that gets to try to see if my slides will share. So let's see. Oh, hold on.
I just unshared my screen, that's all. So hopefully it won't impact you sharing yours.
Well, it's always a question of whether you present in Teams or you press the share button.
Hit present in Teams. It'll
Okay.
open the notes if you have any. There we go.
All right. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Fast Track Environmental Review overview. So any of you who have been here before, you've seen this presentation a couple times. So I go really fast on a lot of information. Just know that as you move through this process, when you get an award, we will be back and we'll talk to you in a lot more detail. So this is the HUD Environmental Review requirements. So there's a lot of partners in every environmental review. It starts with the city of Detroit. I am the environmental review officer. Sometimes you guys are working through leadership in the mayor's office, through your program staff, through your P3 team member. Shout out to all those guys who are on this call, and the HU project managers as well. But we also have a lot of other federal funders. A lot of times you will have MISTA funding, those of you going into the LITEC rounds or that have project-based vouchers, going through the 4% round using potentially home funds or other federal funds from MISTA. Detroit Housing Commission project-based vouchers, some of their development funds are also, all of DHC's money is federalized. Some of you are also working with HUD directly and have a 221D4 loan or some other kind of HUD loan on a project. So just know that there's a lot of people in this environmental review process. Then you guys yourselves, the developers, all of your consultants and attorneys and environmental consultants and cultural resource managers, and then all of the state agencies that we have to work through to get compliance with environmental review. So believe me, we are very, very full of people in your business of these projects. So who is required to comply? All federal agencies are required to comply with NEPA. All HUD entitlement communities, of which Detroit is one, and all projects using a City of Detroit HUD allocation. So there are many, many types of projects here. I see that choice is not on this list. So projects with choice funding, all of these people, or all of these kinds of projects need to comply with the HUD environmental review requirements. So what laws do we comply with? NEPA includes all of these laws and authorities. You may have been seeing in the recent news that NEPA is being changed. Right now, HUD has not changed their environmental review requirements, and until they do, we still comply with everything in 24 CFR Part 58. So how do we comply with the environmental review process? So a project begins at the city, whether you get an application, whether you apply, to the NOFA for federal funding, or an application to DHC for project-based vouchers or any of their funding, or any of your pre-application work that you work with any of the P3 team or the mayor's office or any of those things. That's how a project begins at the city of Detroit. Then you get a HUD federal funding award or conditional award. Most times you'll get a conditional award based on being conditioned on completing the environmental review. Then we start the environmental review process. We go all the way through that process with your consultants. We complete the HUD environmental approval, and then construction and NEPA compliance commitments happen during construction. So again, how do we comply? We go through all of these steps. You define the project. That's what you're doing in your NOFA application at this point. Then my team or myself determine the level of review required for your project. Almost all are going to require an environmental assessment. Then we conduct the environmental review with your consultants. We help your consultants through the process. They will do all of the work in the HUD online system, the HEROES system, and then they will submit that to us for our certification. And then we go through finalizing that environmental review, the request for release of funds, and the authority to use grant funds. We commit and expend HUD funding. I mean, that's you guys again starting construction and the HRD project managers that follow that project through construction. We look at any scope change after that authority to use grant funds comes, and then we look at construction and continuing obligations past construction. Okay, so the biggest tenet that you need to think about for environmental review is called the limitation of action, which is the choice limiting action. There is a very large part of the NEPA regulation is that we do public notice before we do anything on a site, before we decide anything for a site. So a choice limiting action is a real property acquisition. It's leasing, disposition, bidding, demolition, rehab, repair, renovation, construction, anything that touches the site is not allowed after you apply for this NOFA funding. So people all, especially in the NOFA, ask about splitting a parcel. Can we split a parcel? No, if it changes ownership, you cannot split a parcel. People ask about vacating an alley. No, you can't do that after your application because you become an owner of half of that alley or all of that alley. So there are
Yes,
very
ma'am.
specific things that can't happen because of the
Yes,
choice limiting
but
action. I'm sorry, can somebody
you
mute?
have to see about this mute unmute.
Okay. So the next thing to talk about is the fact that the city of Detroit has determined that your NOFA application date is your intent to use HUD funding. So we have a choice, no choice limiting action can be taken after your application is submitted. Okay, here's another list of choice limiting actions. You guys can review these. You'll have these slides. So a consequence of violating the choice limiting action clause in our law is a regulatory violation, which is, a contract, an agreement, an expenditure of funds. It can result in a loss of all HUD funding for the project. And repayment to HUD. So we don't ever want to be in that position. The other is a statutory violation, which means that the city of Detroit has committed funds to your project before it was done, before the environmental review is done, and it's a violation and possible repayment. So we don't want to be in violation or in any repayment because of your projects. So the responsible entity can also have choice limiting actions. This is again if we commit HUD funds. We cannot close on a loan or sign a contract until your environmental review is done. But it also extends to committing non-HUD funds. So the entire project is on hold until you complete the HUD environmental review. All the way down to, putting a sign in the ground or a fence around your site, right? All of those things touch the site in our choice limiting actions. Okay, the next thing we want to talk about is what a meaningful project description includes. It's very important to understand your entire project because the HUD environmental review looks at the entire project, not just a building, not just a parking lot, but all of it together. Phase 1, phase 2, sometimes we need to aggregate projects. So you need to really know the location, the purpose and need. Usually you get straight out of your documentation, the actual project description, the type of project. Again, capture the maximum anticipated scope in the proposal. Then all funding sources, we want to know all of that, and then all development partners. So I talked about aggregation a little bit. HUD requires project aggregation. So project aggregation is one of those things where you have to buy a site, you're going to demo a building, and you're going to do construction, you're going to construct a new building. All of that needs to be included as an aggregate project. Same with a piece of land that's adjoining your main site that you're going to use for parking. That also needs to be included in your environmental review. So most of you are going to trigger the environmental assessment requirements. So understand that the purpose is to evaluate the project as a whole, that we determine the existing conditions and trends of a site, we identify all impacts, and we examine and recommend feasible ways to eliminate or minimize those impacts, and we examine all alternatives to the project, especially a no build or a no work alternative. We look at this, if you look at the laws and authorities, we look at not only is the site suitable for the humans that are going to live there in the future, but also is the site going to be harmed by that development? So, you have to look at it both ways. So there are some major hurdles to the environmental review process. One is the floodplain. The new HUD rules, the floodplain extends into the 500-year floodplain. I will admit this is a rule that HUD is very iffy on their guidance right now on whether they have repealed this new rule or not. And so we are keeping it intact until we get an actual guidance document. No new construction or substantial rehabilitation in the 100-year or 500-year floodplain without compliance with the 8-step process. The 8-step process will require a civil engineer and floodplain experts, and you need to work with all of your team, the P3 team, the underwriter, and the environmental review team very quickly in the development process if you are in or near a floodplain. Contamination is your next environmental review hurdle. You guys all should know what your environmental due diligence requires. That's your phase 1, your phase 2, your BEAs, all of that. All of that is a part of what we need, but we also will, if you have a contaminated site, need to follow through with a response activity plan through EGLE, approved through EGLE, and then all of that documentation of due care compliance approval at the end of a project. Excuse me. Section 106, historical review hurdles. There's a lot of timing involved in this. It takes a lot of time for consultation outside of the city of Detroit. So having a confusion over funding sources or lack of information about multiple funding sources, incomplete application information, again, that lack of a well-defined project description. I can't tell you how many times we've come back and said, no, we need to put this parking lot into this review as well, and it just starts the project all over. Those of you who know what you're talking about archaeology, it's becoming a much bigger compliance issue in the city. So if you have a large site for for new construction, you will probably encounter archaeological requirements. Okay, so environmental consultant partners. So you guys hire your professional staff. It's really important to choose those consultants wisely. Complicated projects may require additional professional expertise. Environmental consultants must be knowledgeable of EGLE requirements. EGLE standards are changing every day. New guidance documents are coming out, and you need an environmental consultant who's abreast of all of those changes. Historical consultants that are knowledgeable with the State Historic Preservation Office, Section 106, and the archaeological requirements. And other specialized consultants may be needed. Again, for floodplain, wetland noise, all of those things may require specialized consultants. So just be aware of if your consultants that you're hiring are really up to date on everything they need to be up on. So my piece of the environmental or the NOFA environmental scoring is part of the construction score, because we are looking to provide your readiness to proceed. And we have a 5-point spread. If you come in with a phase 1 that says there's all of these recognized environmental conditions and we don't know the status of contamination on the site, and it's large enough to trigger archaeology, and you're not going to get any points for readiness, because we know that that project will probably take at least a year to get through the environmental review process. If you come in with better documentation, we know it's contaminated, you've started talking to EGLE and in a response activity plan or whatever that looks like, then we'll be able to give you a few more points. Those projects that come in that we think won't have a contamination issue, or we really know what's going on, will get the most points. So in conclusion, we're a team in environmental compliance. All of us work together to try to get this money to be able to fund your project. We certainly are charged with ensuring environmental compliance, and we try to provide you with options to make your deal work within those environmental review requirements. So I'm not going to take questions now. We're going to take questions at the end of all 3 of these compliance pieces. So I will come back on for questions.
All right, thank you, Penny. I believe next up we've got presentation from our labor standards, Davis-Bacon prevailing wage team. So we'll turn it over to the, hello.
Hello, thank you so much, Larry. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Alrighty. My name is Monique Campbell, and I am one of the Labor Compliance Analyst 3, and I will be going over the labor standards, Davis-Bacon, and prevailing wages requirements. Okay, our first slide is the Labor Standards and Davis-Bacon Act Monitor and Compliance Requirements. The Davis-Bacon Act, DEB, enacted in 1931 and amended in 1935 and 1964. It applies to federal construction contracts over $2,000. It covers alterations, repairs, painting and decoration activities, and federally funded construction projects, and applies to laborers and mechanics and requires weekly payments of prevailing wages. The federal labor standards general purpose is to ensure proper payment of wages to laborers and mechanics working on federally funded construction projects. A summary of requirements is prevailing wages must be paid at least once per week, premium pay for overtime hours worked, and unauthorized payroll deductions are prohibited. Labor standards key objectives are to apply federal labor standards properly, support contract compliance through education and guidance, monitor contract performance, identify and follow on underpayments, and pursue disbarment against actions against repeated violators. Payment requests, labor standards sign off on the following payments requests. Applicable CDBG funded construction project request, applicable home funded construction payments, payments to service companies, architects, environmental companies, and cleaning companies, payments to suppliers, and acquisitions when construction is included as part of the contract. Required documents for payment approval are submissions of all required labor standard documents, current weekly certified payrolls, AIA documents, sworn statements, waivers of liens if applicable, invoices and receipts, and as well as letters from subrecipients and owners. Payment approval delays will occur if restitution is owed to employees, current payrolls have not been submitted, payroll payment packages missing required documents, contractors fail to resolve outstanding issues, outstanding liens on a project. And this is your labor's compliance team, our director, Angela Thomas, our supervisor, Jackie Jackson, our labor compliance 3 specialist, Jennifer Thomas Spokane, and myself, Monique Campbell. And that will conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Monique.
Mhm.
Again, we'll have questions regarding the labor standards, Davis-Bacon prevailing wage requirements when we have our first Q&A session. Just to note for everyone, and when we work with the projects after you apply, and if your project receives a conditional award, or when we're going through the application process, Davis-Bacon requirements come into play if you have 12 or more home units for the property, and the number of home units is determined based on there's a maximum subsidy amount per unit that we can award home funds to a project. So if the amount of funding that is awarded gets to the level that triggers more than 11 home units, because it's 12 or more, then Davis-Bacon requirements would be required for the project, and your budget should make sure that it can accommodate the payment of those prevailing wages. And also, if the project has 9 or more project-based vouchers, Davis-Bacon requirements automatically are required. And if it's any type of community development block grant funding, CDBG, meaning traditional CDBG funds, CDBG CV funds, or CDBG DR funds, if there's more than, and if there's 8 or more contiguous units for the project, meaning it could go over multiple parcels of land, but if there's 8 of those in a row, or if it's a multifamily project with, say, 40 units, those certainly would be 8 or more contiguous. If you were to receive CDBG funds for that project, Davis-Bacon would immediately be triggered, and you would need to make sure your budget accommodates enough funds to pay the prevailing wages and meet all the requirements. So thanks again, Minnie. We will now go on to a Section 3 requirements presentation from Patricia, I believe. Patricia?
Yes,
Ready?
good morning, Larry. Thank you. I will share my screen. Good morning, everyone. My name, okay, there we go. Good morning, everyone. My name is Patricia Ford. I am the Section 3 Program Manager. Section 3. Now, Section 3, actually, a fun fact, if you call it a fun fact, has been around since 1968. It is a provision of the Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968. And the regulation is actually 24 CFR Part 75. Some of you may know it or have some experience where it was CFR Part 135. It has been updated. Now, Section 3 program with the updates, it is to ensure that employment and other economic opportunities generated by federal funds for housing and community development programs shall, to the greatest extent feasible, be directed to low and very low income persons. And this Part 75 actually was released in the fall of 2020. So we're almost at 5 years with this updated Section 3 regulation. Now, I like to start off with what's the end results? You know, what do you have to do for Section 3, one of the many regulations on your project? So Section 3 is actually triggered if you receive a conditional award of 200,000 or more. You're going to receive that on these projects. So it's going to trigger Section 3. And actually, Penny mentioned earlier of all the different funding types that triggers the environmental review. What the same funding type to trigger Section 3, home, Block grant, choice, if we still have any COVID dollars, HAPWA, NSP. And again, if any of those projects are either a housing rehab, new housing construction, or other public construction improvement projects. Now, with Section 3, with the updated of the Section 3 program, HUD actually published 2 benchmarks that we have to meet. So with the updated Section 3 regulation, we are concentrating on labor hours. So we're going to look at total labor hours. So we are going to look at all the payrolls on the project from beginning to end. So when the project has completed, say 12 months, 18 months, 24 months later, we're going to take the total of all those labor hours. Now, within those labor hours, the goal is that 25% of the total labor hours were performed by individuals that have been identified through our office, the Section 3 program office, that 25% were performed by Section 3 workers. And within that 25%, 5% were performed by individuals that have been, again, identified by us as targeted Section 3 workers. So I like to start off with the end result. So that's the goal. The goal are those 2 benchmarks that were set by HUD. Now, many of you have seen this slide before. It has been refreshed and updated. So Section 3 is really 2 parts, a compliance part and a verification part, or branch, if you will. Now, where you are right now, you are in project formation. You are developing your projects. You're applying to this NOFA round. And what is going to be really important during your formation part that's in your part of your application are a couple of documents that you have to submit for Section 3. That's your intent to comply and your Section 3 plan and a narrative or some goals or some achievements that you received thus far within the past 5 years. We're not going to go back beyond 5 years at this point. And then the other part is that when you're working on your Section 3 plans, we're really going to need you to make a plan around your outreach efforts. And this is where the verification comes in. You may have some subcontracts on these projects with businesses that have been verified as Section 3. And you may have individuals that have been verified as Section 3 workers. Now, these do not have to be new hires. You may actually have someone on your staff, your employees that meet the Section 3 requirements. Again, these slides will be provided to you. I'm not going to go deep into the definition of what is a Section 3 business and what is a Section 3 worker, but businesses or your subs can come through us and get verified as a Section 3 business, and they can get verified through their ownership or through their employees. A Section 3 worker and a target Section 3 worker is an individual that's already on your staff that meet the income. So again, remember, you do not have to hire someone new. You may have hired someone 3 years ago, and the date of hire, when you hired them, they met that income if they're over income today, or of course, if they meet the income today. So this, again, you will receive this slide. And also, this is just an example of the income over the years. And this is also on our website. So we do provide you, just in case you hired someone last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we do provide the income at the date of hire. So please review your roster on who's on your staff that may meet this Section 3 requirement. So really going back to the documents you need to submit for Section 3, your intent to comply, and your Section 3 plan, and it is part of the application and is part of the scoring. So what is really important that you want to concentrate on, again, is your outreach efforts. So we give you actually some examples for outreach efforts. Caution, please do not say yes to everything. In the real world, you are not going to do everything you say yes to, because if you say yes, we're going to ask you for verification of that outreach effort. So one of the pages in your Section 3 plan is examples for outreach to individuals, especially if you need to hire someone. And another page is outreach to Section 3 businesses. Again, any of the subs that's on the call today, if you're interested in becoming verified as a Section 3 business, please contact our office and I can work with you to become verified. We are working on more tools and resources to help you all to identify individuals that's on your roster, or if you need to hire. Some of the subs do need to hire for manpower. And what's really exciting right now is we are partnering with the Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters and Millwrights. So a lot of times, especially if a project is deemed Davis-Bacon, some of you say it's Davis-Bacon, so we can't find anyone, we won't have anyone. You will be not pleasantly surprised, but you may be surprised that some of your individuals, your journeymen and your apprentices, will meet the income verification. So with our partnership with the Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters and Millwrights, they are working with us and they are going to do the legwork for you. If you partner up with them, they are going to do the legwork to identify individuals that meet the requirements of Section 3. And then this is just a tool. If you do need to hire someone, we want to give you other tools that you may be able to receive a tax credit on those individuals that you hire. So you can offset their first year or their second year salary when you hire them. So these are examples of who you can reach out to receive more information with the state of Michigan. And then with the Small Business Administration, these are the websites to receive more information on receiving a tax credit. So what does this mean for you? Again, you're here that if you receive a conditional award, HUD has set 2 benchmarks for Section 3 against the labor hours. The 2 benchmarks, again, is the 25% of the total labor hours performed by Section 3 workers. And within that 25%, 5% performed by targeted Section 3 workers. Now, this is a win-win situation where if you are able to subcontract with Section 3 businesses, everyone working for that sub, we can mark them as Section 3 under the labor hours, even if they're over income. So it's highly important that some of the subs do get verified as Section 3. Then if you hire someone, we can count them for 5 years if you hire them today, or if you hired them 3 years ago, we can still count them for another couple years, even if they're over income. And then this also gives you an opportunity or an incentive to retain some of these individuals to improve the quality of life of these individuals. And also this shows HUD that the city of Detroit is making that effort to work on Section 3 and to show HUD that Detroit should continue to receive future funding for our projects. So thank you for your time. This is our team. Again, I am Patricia Ford, and I am going to turn it back over to Larry. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Okay, this is kind of our first stop where we've got an opportunity if you got questions and questions, and we'll try to provide answers for any of the presentations that we've had so far this morning regarding environmental requirements, labor standards, and Davis-Bacon, and then Section 3. Just if I get a quick minute, yeah, and please just raise your hands, and we'll ask you to provide your question. We'll also try to see if there are any questions in the chat that we need to cover. But just while I got a quick minute, I just want to remind everyone, so as you're hearing all these requirements, keep in mind that these are federal funds that the city is awarding. We're using home funds, CDBG funds, and like I say, various federal funds generally is what we use for this program. Remind us, it's a gap funding program. So you're applying for gap funds from the city because you've obtained all the other financing that you possibly can for your project. You have a primary loan, you have a first mortgage, and you've gotten that first mortgage based on your financial projections, is large of a mortgage as you can get. You're then coming to this NOFA to fill a gap because you're deeply targeting affordable housing, and that's maybe impacting the amount of mortgage you can secure. All right. So, but with that, the expectation is that you don't have a lot of money in your financial pro forma then to be able to pay a lot of debt service for the city debt. Right. So if you have a 9% low income housing tax credit project and you get $1 million through this NOFA as a conditional award, or you have something that doesn't use tax credits or uses 4% tax credits and you get $3 million, the payment that you're going to be required to make in your finances for the property is low. It's generally $2,500 a year for that large amount of funds that you're receiving. It all comes due at the end of the mortgage term, and then if you preserve the affordable housing, it can usually be extended for another period of time if you restructure or refinance the project. But so it's low cost financing, but what this program does have is you have to comply with all of the federal requirements that come with those funds. So we've got the environmental requirements, we've got the labor standards when they apply. Section 3 is going to always apply if we're getting, federal funds. So just want to keep that in mind. It's intended to be a funding program for gap funding to help support more affordable housing. But everything that you're hearing today, these are not maybes. Can they be waived? No. Generally, I mean, these are requirements. So, but certainly we work with you and guide you through the process. Everybody's here to support and help the projects move forward. So with that, I see there's a question, and it says E is all I have, all that we have for the name. So if you can, I don't know if you put it in the chat already, E, if you can make sure that we get a good name for you so we can keep track of your attendance, and that you're even asking questions. So that would be great. So what's your question for us?
Hi, good morning. Yes, I did put my name in the chat. I'm Denise Darnell with Euchariston LLC in cooperation with my business partners, Alliance for Business in Virginia. They are here as well. Our question is, does NOFA help fund single-family housing for affordable, affordable housing, or only multifamily dwellings?
Well, I would answer that with it depends. This is are you referring to a single family rental development project? So are you referring to a scattered site, or are you referring to for sale home buyer affordable projects?
Yes. Yes.
So if
new construction for single family homes, okay, that are, fall under the affordable, family dwelling.
Yeah.
And they're single family homes here in the city of Detroit, owned by the land bank. We're working with them.
Yeah.
The land
go ahead. This NOFA right now, as it's structured for this round, only would refer to rental properties, projects that were available for rental to low-income households. You can watch, if you haven't already, you should sign up on the City of Detroit's website to receive email notifications, because we send out notifications of any of our other funding sources and this NOFA when it becomes available. So make sure you sign up and ask for any funding notifications, because in the future and in the past, we have had programs that were more for gap financing for home buyer type programs. So this particular round, though, is not inclusive of that. We also have some other programs that are for smaller developments that may be launched soon to help those. So again, my recommendation to everybody is make sure you're registered to receive those email notifications with any funding sources. Yeah. So
thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your question. Okay.
Larry, we allow for questions until 11:05, but I'm not certain if we'll have many. If you, maybe give another minute if anyone wants to raise their hand or type in the chat, but otherwise, if you're comfortable with moving forward with the presentation, and if any question, oh, there's a hand. Renita?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Rainier.
Yes.
Hello. Good morning. My question is, the first round we didn't make, but we definitely want to be in this round. But one of the concerns is if it's going to be a requirement if our project is going to require Davis-Bacon, because it's going to cause an additional 30% increase in our hard costs. So I don't know if there's somebody I need to speak with offline just to confirm. I know it was mentioned that if you have 12 or more units that it could drive Davis-Bacon. If we had 12 or ours, I think it's a mixed use and it's 13 units. What that looks like, or will we be able to maybe just use funding for up to 11 of those units?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question, Lau, and it gives me a great opportunity to help clarify what I said. But first of all, you should, if you haven't already, please schedule. And I think we're still trying to keep a couple of windows open. But we're pretty well booked already, but you should schedule a pre-application submission meeting. And that's really an opportunity for myself, Naomi, members of the public-private partnership team or other city departments. You know, if it's a permanent supportive housing project, we have team members from the homelessness solutions team join the meetings. And that's more of a time to go one-on-one through your projects, and we can sort of make sure that you're anticipating the things that your project may need to consider when you're submitting your application.
Yes. So
But
we did have the pre-application meeting the last round. At that point, it was suggested that we submit two performers, one with and one without Davis Bacon. So I didn't know if we needed to go through that process again,
yeah,
just to get that clarity.
Yeah, you should always have those meetings because your project, may have changed or certain regulations may have changed. So it's always a good idea to have those each round just to have a check-in and see how things are progressing, for your project and things. So, but to get to help clarify what I was saying earlier, it's not the number of units in the overall project. You can have a 50 unit development that only has 5 or 6 home units if the amount of home funding that you're asking for only requires 5 or 6 home units, because again, it's tied to the maximum subsidy amount per unit, and it varies depending if it's a studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, like what type of size the units are and what the maximum subsidy is. So yeah, that it's really driven to the amount of funding that you're asking for, and how much that gap financing will determine the number of home units. So, for example, is a target if you got 1 bedroom unit, if you've got all 1 bedroom units in your proposed property, like I think the number is somewhere around, like, you can go up to about $2.4 million before you would have and still not require enough home units that triggers prevailing wages. If you go over that amount for 1 bedroom units, then your budget has to anticipate that. And that's what, as you said, we hear different numbers, Renita, as far as the additional cost burden of prevailing wages. Sometimes some general contractors say it's very nominal, others say it's, significantly higher. But depends on your general contractor and what your pricing is, and again, their subs and things that they're using, what their subs are currently paying their workers. So hopefully that helps, and please.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, hopefully that helps, and please schedule that meeting.
I've got a quick question as well.
Will do.
Does the NOFA 19 trigger the BABA requirements?
Yes, we've been in that when Mike Neal presents later on, he'll, in his construction rehab requirements section, I know he'll be speaking to the BABA, and what BABA is for everyone. It's Buy American, Build American, Buy American. I forget. It's one of that order, but everyone goes by the name BABA. But it's a requirement of federal funds that was each of the different types of funds had different implementation deadline dates for requirements with the BABA regulations, and all of our NOFA does state that the construction pricing should meet the requirements or anticipate needing to meet the BABA requirements. So, and what that is, and Mike will go into this way better explanation than I'm sure I ever could. The materials for the construction need to be sourced or manufactured in the United States, and certain percentages and of them. So, and the parts in certain mechanical items too need to have that, meet that requirement. So That is another thing that some contractors, again, we've heard from some contractors, neutral, not that much. They already get most of their materials that are manufactured or sourced in the US. Other ones say, oh gosh, we had a supplier that's outside of that. And so in order to do that, it's going to cost a little bit more. So, but yes, great question, because we hadn't mentioned that yet. Anything else? Naomi, were there any questions in the chat that anybody had asked that we need to touch on?
No, I had not seen any.
Okay.
I just want to note, just cautiously, that I am, again, the deadline to originally submit for the pre-app meetings was the 8th of August. And Larry, I don't believe we have any more availability for scheduling.
Okay. All right, you can always submit, but like I say, unfortunately, if we don't have any more times, then it may be more challenging. But hopefully, Renita, if you didn't schedule that, I was kind of answered your question already. I don't think that your amount of funding would trigger, but I don't know without seeing your current pro formas and things. So sure. Thanks, Naomi.
Otherwise, I don't see any additional questions in the chat. But we are at 11:04, so if you'd like, we can go ahead and move forward with the program.
All right.
We discussed something in the chat. Oh, okay.
Yep. Our next. Yeah. So our next. So we're going to move forward with our next team. I believe I saw that Russell Baltimore was here. I don't know if James is here, but Russell, are you ready to go ahead and get started? Russell's going to be talking about the preliminary plan review, which is something that you really should be doing very early on. As soon as you have planned, Russell will talk about it, but as soon as you have an idea of your project, you should be meeting with Russell and his team to go through their preliminary review of your plans so that you can make modifications so that by the time you get ready to apply for our NOFA, you have some good plans and you know what your project's going to be and what your requirements are so that your pricing makes sense and everything else. It shouldn't be a last minute, oh my gosh, I got to hurry up and get that item for my NOFA application. This should be done early on. So Russell, if you want to go ahead.
James on by any chance? I had to run out and do an emergency pick up real quick. I'll be back at my desk in like 3 minutes. So can we move to the next presentation and come back, or is James?
Yeah, I think we can. Yeah, James. I don't see James, Russell, but let me see. Do we have Eric, Roland, and Justin? Is everybody here?
Right. So
we are ready.
Yeah, we can certainly go.
Okay. All right, then Russell, we will go ahead. We'll just sort of change our order a little bit. We're going to go on to, as we mentioned, as I mentioned earlier, when we talk about priority projects, one of the priorities is the preservation of currently existing either regulated or naturally occurring affordable housing that would typically be occupied, meaning there's current residents in the property. So the next presenters, presenting team are going to go through the requirements that you have to make sure you meet regarding the Uniform Relocation Act requirements related to the existing residents that are in the building. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Not sure who's going first, but Eric, Roland, and Justin.
All right. We'll start with introductions because Roland is out today, so I am subbing in for him. My name is Kyle Ofori, and I serve as the Director of Preservation and Asset Management. I'll pass it to the rest of my team, Eric and Justin, to introduce themselves next while I get these slides going.
Yeah, and
Sure.
Very nice to meet you. So let's say you do singles, replace singles.
Very nice to meet you all. Eric Andrews, Preservation Initiatives Manager. And I will pass it to Justin.
Good morning and happy Tuesday, all. My name is Justin Curry. I serve as the Housing Compliance Specialist with HRD. After your first one, though.
All right. And we're going to talk today about occupied redevelopments, the Uniform Relocation Act, and Section 104D. These are all pieces of legislation and regulations that are related to if you have an occupied building. So if you're getting federal funding through the city and your building is occupied, you need to make sure to adhere to these federal regulations. The team that you see here is here to support. So I want to say that first because there's some pretty dense stuff in here and it's good to stay in contact with us about what your plans are and if you have any questions. But right now we're just going to try to give you the highest level overview of what that involves. So I'm going to start by talking about some requirements that are actually just specific to the city of Detroit, not connected to any federal regulation necessarily. Then we'll go into the URA, Uniform Relocation Act. We'll talk a bit about Section 104D, which is a related regulation, and we'll talk about relocation in general. Then we'll talk about the type of assistance that you all are required to give to the residents at your properties if those are occupied and you're applying for funding, the notices that you need to give to them, and then we'll end with some quick reminders and resources besides ourselves. So now I'll turn it over to Justin to talk about the city of Detroit.
You have to hit it perfect. I'd love to do I'll pretend like I'm gonna do a snake and then I'll just go over the shoulder, front knee. But still playing the same way. Yeah, I still play like I still
So
play
Justin,
right
to
now.
you, or if you need one of us to take over, just let us know real quick.
Yeah, thank you, sir. I don't know. I navigate it by myself. Can you hear me? And then
yes, we can hear you okay. There's some background noise.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Still here.
Yeah, maybe turn your speaker down.
Other than that, Monday through at least Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay. While he's getting that together, I'll just continue with some of these slides. So Justin, let me know when you're ready to tag in.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah.
You're a little faint.
Now, what happens is it's called delamination, where that plastic surface or the carbon
Okay.
surface.
Here, I'll do these slides and then we can come back to you for some of the questions. Okay. All right, so first off, City of Detroit requirements. The reason we have these is because our goal at the city is to make sure that there is never any permanent displacement resulting from the city-supported redevelopment of occupied projects. So for that reason, we have two different sets of standards we'll hold you to. The first is the city standard of tenant retention standards and a required tenant retention plan. And then the second is this federal compliance, the URA and Section 104D compliance. Tenant retention standards, this is just a brief summary of what we hold all residents to, whether they're applying for federal funding from the city or even other support like payment in lieu of taxes or tax abatements or something like that. And the goal is to make sure that rent increases aren't too steep overall for residents. So we have two key time periods. The first is right after a rehab is done, and the second is every year afterwards. Right after a rehab is done, we want to make sure that rent increases are either limited to a 5% increase or that they are set to 30% of a resident's monthly income or of a household's monthly income, because that's what we consider to be affordable. So after that rehab year, every year after that, the maximum rental increase we want to see is a little lesser of 3% per year or the maximum set by HUD or MSHDA, depending on the funding source that you all are going for. We also consider it important to have minimum communication standards, making sure that residents know what's going on with the funding that you've applied for. And that may include a meeting that you hold for your residents with one of us from the city available. A right to return with a 12-month lease offer. So if residents need to move out, they should be able to come back in and get a year-long lease. We'd like to see phased construction so that relocation doesn't need to happen where possible. And then we would need you to assist with the cost of relocation for residents and the process. And then there are many other requirements per the Uniform Relocation Act. This is just a quick screenshot so you have a visual of what a tenant retention plan looks like. It has an old name that we used to use up there, but it's basically your way of telling us in writing what you are committing to doing that adheres to the standards that we have said. So talks about the redevelopment, affordability of the units, the way you'll communicate with residents, what you'll do to make sure the building is habitable while residents are there, and contact information. Everything we need to know that you have a thorough and well thought out plan for taking care of resident relocation. If you're applying to this NOFA, you'll need to submit a tenant retention plan with the NOFA application. So that means you've got a few weeks to put together a good plan, and you can always reach out to us about how to, if you need support with filling out the template or asking any of the questions. It has to be submitted so we can review it before providing a conditional award if the housing underwriting team does that. And then it needs to be finalized and approved prior to closing on the funds. I think I have a few more slides here. So now we'll talk a bit about URA Section 104D and relocation. There's a lot to know about this, but again, we're just covering the basics and pointing you to resources where you can learn more. And Eric, you just remind me when you're supposed to tap in because I forget, but we'll all get there. So first, URA is the Uniform Relocation Act. It has a longer full name that you can read down there from 1970. And the purpose is to have minimum requirements for acquiring property and assisting residents with relocation in federally funded projects. You need to follow it anytime you're receiving federal funds, like home funds, for use in a property that will be acquired, rehabbed, or demolished. So home, CDBG are examples. LIHTC by itself does not count, but oftentimes there's an overlap. So be careful and be aware of your funding sources. A related federal requirement is also connected to CDBG and home funds. It's called Section 104D. It's a section of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974. It's created to make sure that federally funded projects don't lead to low-income people being displaced. So if there's any demolition of low-income units or conversion of low-income units that's happening, and a person might be displaced, like might have to leave the unit in the process or connected to this project, then you would have to offer the resident a different, higher standard of relocation assistance that is linked to Section 104D. I think that's my transition point. So, sure. Do I need to pass it back, or am I supposed to keep going?
I'm fine to take it from here. It's no problem. I appreciate your help.
Okay.
Okay, so permanent displacement. So we define this as basically any person who moves from a property as a direct result of a demolition, rehab, or any written plans to do so for any project. So we would love for you to see 49 CFR 24.2A9 for the formal definition. Does not include the people who are not required to relocate permanently. Tenants who would be relocated for over 12 months may have a few options here. Continue to remain temporarily relocated for an agreed to period. They may permanently relocate to the unit which has been their temporary unit, if it is available to do so. Or they can choose to permanently relocate elsewhere, but they would likely want to use the URA advisory services. And we do as much as possible, and we're looking to see as much as possible around really not permanently displacing people. So that's generally the goal. Temporary relocation is really classified for anything that's under 12 months. And at 12 months, residents who are temporarily relocated must be offered the same rights as people who are permanently displaced. So anytime after 12 months, you're really looking at permanent displacement. Under 12 months is considered a temporary relocation. So comparing the different types of relocation. So we have assistance required and notices required, right? And so we have the temporary relocation that we just spoke about, as well as the permanent displacement. So the assistance that is required with the temporary relocation would consist of relocation advisory services, comparable replacement housing, moving expense payments. And then if it's a permanent displacement, which again is going to be over 12 months, then we're going to be looking at relocation advisory services, comparable replacement housing, moving expense payments, and then replacement housing payments. So this is where it gets a little different. Housing of last resort when necessary, which we won't get into, it's a little bit more involved, but that's definitely something we'd like you to reach out to if you have questions. And then notices that are required when doing a temporary relocation specifically are the general information notice, a notice of non-displacement, and reasonable advance notice to vacate. If it's a permanent displacement, we're looking at general information notice, notice of relocation eligibility, and 90-day notice to vacate. And again, we've talked about this by now, but temporary relocation is different than permanent displacement because one exceeds 12 months, the other does not.
I think we're narrowing in on time, so I'll take the next few and then pass it back to Eric for the notices.
Awesome.
So a bit more on the assistance required that Eric started to talk about. We've got, again, it's relocation advisory services, replacement housing payments, and a comparable replacement dwelling. So advisory services, to summarize, is basically you as the developer making sure that the resident knows what options they have for moving and that they're getting clear communication and whatever help you can provide them along the way. So at minimum, from URA, that requires a personal interview with every person who you'd be moving. But we'll be looking in your tenant retention plan to see what all you're planning to do for those relocation advisory services. Replacement housing payments, that's all about making sure that residents' payments don't go up while they're being displaced. So it may require you to cover the difference between the rent they would pay at the unit they used to be at and the temporary unit where they are. They need to be informed of all their options, may also have an option to get a specific payment that would allow them to purchase a home. But most of the time, it's just payments that help them with rent. There's a statutory limit that says the max is $7,200, but it's often necessary to pay more. And that's what Eric was talking about when he said housing of last resort, because they still need a comparable, decent unit to be in. And then the comparable replacement dwelling basically needs to be a decent, safe, and sanitary other place where folks who are being temporarily or permanently displaced can move to. And ideally, we like to see 3 options offered to those residents. Now I'll pass it back to Eric to talk a little bit about the notices that you're required to give out and give out to residents.
All right, so general information notice. So what is a general information notice? Basically, it is a notice that's issued as soon as feasible to both owners and tenants to provide really just the kind of preliminary information on what's happening with the proposed project, potential rights of tenants, protections, and just kind of try to answer as many questions as possible, open the lines of communication. When should you send this to residents? Is again, as soon as feasible. So when you apply for federal assistance, that would probably be a really good time to start sending out your general information notices to tenants. Any questions, again, please feel free to reach out to us. There is kind of some samples if you were looking to take a look at any in the HUD handbook. It's 1378 Appendix 2, and there are 2 different ones. So where it's going to have residential tenant not displaced, as well as residential tenant to be displaced, which will be Appendix 3. The notice of non-displacement is really just kind of a notice that goes out and it's issued to people within HUD-assisted acquisition, rehabs, or any demo projects who basically don't qualify as being permanently displaced. And the NOND should advise basically that those people of the agency's determination that they will not qualify as someone who will be displaced, and inform them to their right to appeal, which has a formal process that you can actually use through your advisor. And then that is done at the initiation of negotiations, which is also considered the ION. And that should also be sent out to residents as soon as negotiations are started. So we have here Appendix 4. It's another one that you can take a look at. 1378 HUD Handbook, Appendix 4. We can move on to the next one.
Yeah, sorry, I'm
So-
moving a little quickly.
No, it's no problem. I can keep up. Notice of eligibility for a relocation assistance. So the no informs occupants that they will be permanently displaced. It tells them about their eligibility for relocation assistance, gives them an estimated amount of assistance, and based on the particular circumstances that they're going through, the procedures that they will need to basically obtain said assistance. And when do you send this to residents? Basically, again, at the ION or when the property is acquired, whichever happens first. There's another one, 1378 Appendix 6. And we have the 90-day notice, which basically goes out to permanently displaced households. So it must be provided, or it has to be provided within a minimum of 90 days, written notice prior to beginning the required moves, unless it's urgent and something of that nature. And again, this is sent to residents and giving them notice of 90 days that they have to move to a comparable one-to-one replacement unit. We'll skip past the note.
Oh.
Okay. So reasonable advance notice to vacate. So what is it? It's a residential, if a residential occupant will be temporarily relocated, the agency must provide reasonable advance written notice, the date and approximately the duration of the temporary relocation. Again, we do not want to exceed a year because it's no longer a temporary relocation at that point. Minimum of 30 days written notice is recommended, and it should also include the address of the temporary relocation, that it's going to be decent, safe, and sanitary, any costs that will be reimbursed, and just, again, advisory services are available to them.
All right, thank you. So I'll finish up with this reminder and resources. Again, there's a lot to cover, but we can help you sort through things. Things to know. 1, keep as many records as possible as it relates to acquisition and occupancy. This tenant retention plan is a good way to have your records put together, and keep in touch with us about who's moving where and who's moving where as it relates to URA, so that we can make sure that's all accurate. Here are several links to trainings related to URA or to the HUD handbook that Eric was referring to. We'll help point you to the right places if all else fails. So thanks for your time, for the extra time, and we'll be happy to take any questions at the question break.
All right, thank you. I think we will now go back to Russell. Are you in a spot now where you're ready to go?
Yeah, thanks for giving me that time to get back.
All right, all right. Go for it, Russell. Thank you.
All right, let me share my screen. Okay. Preliminary plan reviews and design review. This is for the NOFA. And preliminary plan reviews are run through the Development Resource Center in BSEED. What is a PPR? A PPR is pretty much an early meeting with your development team to sort of flesh out, understand what your project is, and sort of develop a roadmap to getting it permitted. So a PPR outlines your next steps and provides information specific to your project. It includes zoning requirements, site plan review, design review, stormwater, building permit plan review, and it creates connections to other departments that you will need to work with while you're working through your project when it's going through the development process. You receive a detailed roadmap unique to your project, and also it's the start of, James Foster's team at the Development Resource Center, they'll be your point of contact for the life of the project. Whenever you need to have any questions or anything, information, you have them as your point of contact. So getting a project done in the city of Detroit, when you look at this, this roadmap, it's pretty complicated. It'll take patience. We'll support you through it and help you gain the knowledge to how to get it done. The Development Resource Center will help you get your projects done. So the benefits of these PPRs, it's free. This is a free service. It helps you and it helps us understand what your project is and how to get you where you need to go. It provides you, your development team, all the information needed to successfully complete the project and get it permitted. And we take it at the beginning of the project, so hopefully it sets you on a path to get it done. So it's open to all project types. It provides pathways for entitlements. It identifies zoning requirements, identifies stormwater requirements, gives you access to all the departments and the point of contact through those departments. And at the end of the PPR, provides you a roadmap specific to your development. So you submit through the website. You could use this QR code or just go to detroitmi.gov DRC, and you'll find in this website different, there's a permit portal, there's where you submit for a PPR, all of these things. You fill out the application. There's some questions to sort of give us an understanding of what you're trying to do. The application must provide the following: project details and drawings, list of specific questions or issues, and then any specific departments you would like represented at the PPR. So typically when you're submitting for a PPR, we like to see as much as you have, floor plans, site plans, renderings if possible, if you have all that, elevations. I mean, in reality, you don't need all of this to begin with, but we like to get as much. The more information you provide, the more impactful that meeting will be, and the more information and guidance you will get to further your project through the permitting process. So if you come with very little, you get sort of the baseline stuff. If you come with more information, a more fully developed concept package, that's when you'll get some really, really helpful information from all the departments. Because the more information that we see, the more we're able to guide you on how to get it done. So yes, at the end of this PPR, you receive the summary that has sort of the details of what the project is. It gives you notes on, things you'll need to look out for, things that are an issue, things that, citing the project, setbacks, all those kinds of things will be brought up in our review. And then also we provide some inspiration of things that, buildings that have been built before in the city of Detroit or elsewhere that would make sense to do where you're trying to do your development. And also you provide this summary, which is your roadmap, summarizes the entire meeting, gives you links to things that could help you answer some of the questions that you may have, and then tells you how to submit for different further reviews and what paths and people to talk to further on to move the project forward. So it gives you a high level roadmap. Your PPR starts here. After the PPR, you get through to submitting for a permit. Either you go to site plan review or building plan review. If you go to site plan review, there's some conditional items that may have to happen. You may have to go to a Board of Zoning Appeals, have a conditional land use hearing, things like that. You get your permit, you move on for inspections, and then get your CFO. So the PPR, design review, which is what I run, is a part of the PPR. It's our first meeting trying to understand the concept of your project. Typically in design review, we have more than one meeting. Most reviews has like 3 meetings at the most. So initial review, you get comments, we follow up, and then once you've gotten all the things that we've brought up and talked about, satisfied, you move on, and you move on to site plan review. So anyone in this process for NOFA, you are receiving incentives. So you have to have, get your tax abatements, your approvals, you need a design review because you're getting incentives for this project. And then after you have your site plan review, you might need to do some community engagement. You might have to have a public hearing. If you have SLU hearings or BZA hearings, you want to get that stuff done before you go to those hearings to get your approvals. Because you don't want someone showing up at a Board of Zoning Appeals and they don't know anything about your project, and they're there and they end up not liking your project and complaining, and that would put you back. And that has happened. So you want to make sure that you do some sort of community engagement prior to these public hearings, so that everybody's on board with what you're doing. If it's a land sale, it's the same kind of thing. You have a design review, and again, you want to do all of those public, a little bit of public engagement prior to those SLUs and BZAs. That's pretty much it, pretty quick. We're here to help you get these projects done. We want to see them done, and we want to help you along this process. So feel free to reach out. James Foster runs the PPR process, and then I run the planning, development, design review process. Thank you, and look forward to seeing you guys move forward in your projects.
Thanks, Russell. And so our next presenter is Deandra, and she's going to, I should make sure, Deandra, you're here, right?
I'm here.
As I mentioned earlier, another priority type project in the NOFA is permanent supportive housing, and Deandra's going to talk about what a supportive housing project, what that means. So I'll turn it over to you, Deandra.
Thanks, Larry. Hi, everyone. As Larry mentioned, I'm here to present what supportive housing is and how you would qualify for that category in our NOFA. I'm on the Public-Private Partnerships team, or P3 team. So defining permanent supportive housing, it combines deeply affordable housing with services that help people who are facing the most complex challenges to live stability, autonomy, and dignity. And so we have some of the tenets around what makes permanent supportive housing successful here in the boxes on the right. But really, we're looking for developments that are providing MSHDA project-based vouchers with on-site services to support households who are exiting chronic homelessness. And we'll get into what that is in just a moment. Some of the key terms you'll need to know for our portion of the NOFA, if you're submitting for that, is the Detroit Continuum of Care, or COC. And that's our local planning body that is comprised of agencies and stakeholders within Detroit, Hamtramck, and Highland Park working to end homelessness. CAM, or the Coordinated Assessment Model. You will also see this referred to as the CES, or the Coordinated Entry System. Locally here in Detroit, we just call our Coordinated Entry System the CAM. And that is the body that refers people who are experiencing homelessness to emergency shelter and other services as resources are available. And this is also the group that would refer individuals and households to your development for lease up. And then we have the Homeless Management Information System, or HMIS. And this is an information technology system that's used to collect client-level data on the provision of housing services. So all of our supportive housing developments are required to use HMIS and get licensed in HMIS before lease up. And then chronic homelessness. This is an individual with a disability currently living in shelter or on the streets that has been homeless for a year or more. And it doesn't have to be just an individual, but it can be an individual within a household that is experiencing homelessness. So who gets referred to permanent supportive housing systems or developments? PSH projects are required to take all referrals from the COC's prioritization list. So currently, our prioritization is at chronic homelessness, so number 1. So when a unit in a PSH development becomes available, the CAM will refer a household experiencing chronic homelessness to that development that would meet the unit makeup. So if it's a 2-bedroom, could be a household of 2 or up to 4, just depending on the household makeup, where if it's a studio, a single child could be referred. If we were to reach a point where chronic homelessness was solved in the city of Detroit, then we would move to our second prioritization, which would be unsheltered, and then going down the list. So all that to say, there will always be someone to be referred to your development. Appendix H is the portion in our NOFA that is for supportive housing developments. These are the point totals, so it's out of 40 points, and these are where you can earn the points. On the right-hand side, please note you do have to address every item in each question. So some of the questions ask for multiple pieces of information. Just double check that you've answered the question fully and completely. The attachment 4 that we are requesting is not the same as MISHDA's Addendum 3, though there's similar pieces of information we may be gathering from you. Just know that they are different. We're looking for developments that are going to focus on housing first, harm reduction, and tenant-focused service delivery. So understand at the federal level, there are conversations about those directives, but at this time where we are, these are still our guiding principles, and so that is what we are requesting to see in this NOFA. And then responses should reflect collaboration from all project partners. So we understand that supportive housing developments take a lot of different people and a lot of different groups to make them successful. So for questions where we're asking about lead agency and service delivery agency, I understand sometimes there are multiple partnerships that make that happen. So please make sure you're addressing both information from the lead service agency and the on-site service delivery agency. We just really want to understand, who are the different folks coming to the table to deliver these services, and what are their roles and how will they focus on the development. So the budget, whatever format is easiest for you to use, we will accept it. There isn't a template we're providing, but we really want to see a budget for service provision that covers 15 years. I know that that's a really far time. We're asking for it at the start when there are shovels in the ground, there aren't awards, but we really want you to be thinking about quality service delivery and what it's going to take to make it happen. This is like the bread and butter of PSH. So we really want to see the thought that's going to service delivery and the commitment going to service delivery, both from staffing and partnerships, but also financial. So when you're looking at your budget, please don't put like $100,000 for staff. Tell us what that goes to. And that's just an example. It could be plus or minus. Tell us, is it peer support specialists? Is it case managers? Is it, something else? Whatever it is, we want to see kind of a line item breakdown for that. And then there should be startup costs at the beginning. So do you need to buy computers for staffing, office furniture, etc.? Are there office supplies? Are there bus passes you're purchasing? So give us that kind of breakdown so we can understand what your costs are, and you can also understand potentially what your costs are and how you're going to fund it. I understand you may not have full idea of where that funding is coming from. You may be talking to foundations or other things. So give us an idea of what you're thinking of to bring that funding into the development. All right, the CSH Commitment to Quality Checklist. So we have provided this as a download on Neighborly. The CSH quality checklist is no longer on CSH's website. And I'm sorry, CSH is Corporation for Supportive Housing. So please just download it from the Neighborly application, complete it, and re-upload it there. Basically, you're going to look at the worksheet, and the developer, owner, service partner, lead, and property manager should work together to complete this, because we ask questions about all of those different parties. It is okay if you put no on some of these. We totally expect some of these will be a no. It's really for you to think through, if it's a no now, what do I need to do to get there? What items am I missing? What tools do I need to develop? Or if it is a yes, tell us about the tool you have. Some of you already have a tenant selection plan, where maybe some of you are still developing one. So just use that tool to really think through it. You do not get points deducted if you hit no. You only get a point for completion. So it's okay to put a no. I know that that is not something you hear commonly with applications. So just want to highlight that. If you have questions, you can contact CSH. They work with us, so they're happy to assist you. And you can reach out to them at mi4michigan@csh.org. All right. The COC letter of support, these are required for all permanent supportive housing developments. This is one of your commitment level docs. So we understand that you probably will not have this letter in hand at time of submission for the city NOFA. So just know that this is one of your commitment level docs that are due Monday, October 6th. You are required to have a letter of support from the COC in order to receive funding through our NOFA. In order to receive a letter of support, you're going to attend a meeting with the COC PSH Letter of Support Committee. You're going to provide the project description, development team. You're going to follow their process. And then the COC, if your project is approved, they will issue you a letter of support, which you would turn in to us and to MISTA. If you would like to meet with the COC to receive a letter of support, the email is on the bottom there, and there is also a link to the policy that you will access through this recording as well. So the COC letter of support policy, you can access that through this link here. That will be in the PDF upload after this presentation. There are also links to CSH, and the local staff is Lindsay Bishop Gilmore, but you can just use the mi@csh.org because it is a much shorter email address. And then there's links to the CAM and the Detroit COC. If you have any questions about supportive housing, my contact information is here. I'm more than happy to chat with you about that. And then our partner on the homelessness solutions team, Lauren Licata, we can chat with you about your proposed development and just see if it's a fit for this NOFA category. All right, I'll turn it back over to you, Larry. Thank you.
Thanks, Deandra. All right. So we're going to move on to our next presenter, Mike Neal, to go over some of the construction and rehabilitation requirements. Mike, I don't know if you were on earlier, but we did have somebody who asked about BABA, and I sort of said Mike's going to be talking or maybe covering some of that later on way better than I could. So Mike, I'll let you take it over.
For building it up, Larry. let me share and I'll present. Okay, are you able to see my screen? Construction management overview?
Yep, it's up.
Excellent. Okay, I'm going to get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Mike Neal, and I manage the construction management team for HRD. And we're involved in projects starting today with NOFA. So when we see your application, that'll be our first experience working with you. Those of you we don't know, at least. And then we'll manage your project all the way through the underwriting, where we'll make sure that it complies with all minimum standards and expectations for quality, for minimum standards for green energy, code requirements, etc., all the way through and beyond close of construction through the affordability period and compliance inspections. The construction management team that I mentioned myself. I have 3 others, and we're looking to add a 4th. Right now, we have Eric Light, Denisha Stevens Stewart, and the newest addition, Joseph Follett. The NOFA review documents list, these are the things that we're looking at and evaluating in your NOFA application. We're going to start with a project summary. That's the place where we look to get our first look at what your project is. So please be, similar to what Penny said, please be descriptive of what it is so that as I and my team are pouring through the documents, we want to make sure we don't miss something. If you've described something, we want to be able to find it. If you haven't described it and we don't find it, that's not good. So again, project summary, then we'll go on to the plans and specifications, and we're going to be looking for accessible unit details. I believe a schedule is required. We're going to want to know the location, the type, and how many. As mentioned before, the green energy building standards. We're going to make sure that meets the applicable standard for your project. We're looking for a trade payment breakdown. This is where we get our first look at what your proposed costs are. We also will evaluate the contractor's AIA 305 qualification statement, and we'll rate the contractor. We're going to look at the total development budget, and in that, we're looking in particular at the construction contingency. We'll expect to see a proposed construction schedule outlining the duration of the contract and a third-party cost estimate. I'm going to go into these in more detail as we go forward. So we'll go on to project plans and specifications. What we're looking for here in order to do a good review is we want to see the cover plan details that list the applicable building and mechanical codes. We want you to list the green energy standards and certification requirements. In other words, what is your project designed to achieve, and then what are certification requirements to do so. You want to see the unit size and configuration details. Again, you want to include accessible and visual hearing impaired units, count and location. For parking details, we're looking for number, type, and location. Is it a parking garage? Is it off-site? Is it on street? We want you to describe that, how many and where. A project specification book. That's where we look at the type of materials that you're going to use. That's important to us if we're doing a true cost estimate. We need to know what we're looking at. Without this detail, we can only do a generic look. And the more detail we have, the closer we can determine whether your costs are reasonable. For single family rehabilitation projects, Larry mentioned that those aren't common, but occasionally they pop up. When they do, as opposed to a set of project plans, you must have at least a detailed scope of work that includes quantities and unit cost details. That gives us our look again so we can evaluate your costs. The trade payment breakdown I mentioned before, the HRD has its own template. That's the preferred template. If this is a MISHDA HRD joint project, we can accept MISHDAs also. The trade payment breakdown that you submit with your application must be signed and dated by the general contractor. HRD maximum general contractor fees, those will be listed on the trade payment breakdown. Its GC profit is 6%, overhead 2%, general conditions 6%. So we're looking at 14%. We may consider higher percentages if these fees, if MISHDA or other funder approves a higher percentage. Typically, this only occurs on smaller projects and not very often. But the possibility exists, so we'll put it out there. The total development budget. We want to see the contingency now, and the minimum contingency requirements are very important to note. For new construction projects, there must be a 5% set aside. Non-historic rehabilitation, 12.5%, and for historic rehabilitation, the risk is of all 15%. Construction contingency is a conditional funding set aside and should not be included in trade payment breakdown total construction line item cost or as part of a guaranteed maximum price contract. It needs to remain separate, and we track it as it is or isn't used. It cannot be part of the overall cost. Contractor's qualification statement must be signed and complete. Affordable project experience should be highlighted. This information is frequently omitted, and it impacts scoring. So there are instances where we'll see a lot of projects that were done. They might have been done in other states, other cities, projects I'm not familiar with. If none of them are listed as affordable projects, then I can't credit you for having affordable project experience. So make sure that you highlight them in some way so I can identify that you either meet or do not meet the minimum expectations for experience. Independent third-party financial report. This is a closing requirement, but I have the ability to score you an additional 2 points if you're able to provide that at this stage. In the case of rehab, a capital needs assessment will also meet this purpose. These are some post-award notes and requirements. Here again, I go into more detail about the third-party cost estimate. It says before a project can begin the closing process, the developer must provide a third-party cost estimate comparison for the proposed construction budget. That is technically not correct, even though I wrote it and said it. Generally at the 80% threshold when you're at closing, that's when we expect that, but you cannot close without it. Post-closing construction process. I'm going to go over this briefly. Many of you, or at least some of you, may not even get to this stage. Let's hope we all do, but we know that the funding won't support that, and maybe the projects either. So I will go over it briefly. The construction draw meeting will be scheduled monthly. The expected attendees are the typical people: owner, architect, general contractor, and a construction manager. This would include any other lenders' representatives. The draw will be reviewed and approved or rejected, subject to revision. The approved draw payment request package, including all fully executed documentation, should be submitted electronically to the construction manager assigned to your project and the assigned project manager. That will be somebody from Naomi's team or Steve's team or whoever's team. You'll know the players when you get to that stage. Change order requests are subject to the same expectations as general draw documentation. No change order should be submitted as part of the current draw request that hasn't already been approved by construction manager at HRD. In other words, we'll meet, and if there's an issue with potential change orders, it's incumbent upon you to address that early. Let's discuss it prior to just seeing it as part of a draw request, because in theory, it could be rejected. Pay application for the GC, the required documentation. We require contractor and subcontractor invoices using AAA 702, 703 documentation. We require signed waivers of lien for each subcontractor or supplier who invoice for receipt payment in previous month's application. I should mention that the AIA 702, 703 also serves as a waiver. So if it's properly filled out and signed, that can suffice as your waiver. HUD-specific construction draw document templates are available and they'll be shared for your use. Copy of all approved change orders included in the billing request. And again, this would be approved, previously approved. So if we approve something at the draw 2 stage that you didn't invoice until draw 4, that would be the time to include that change order as part of the process. Environmental clearances, reports, and other supporting documentation must accompany payment or service request. In other words, if you did some lead abatement and you said you were 50% complete and you were drawing that, we would need documentation to reflect that 50% completion. And if it's all of it's complete, then we would need final certs and clearances, etc. BABA compliance, we'll go into this in a lot more detail later, but it requires a self-certification and manufacturer vendor made in America supporting documentation. Special notes, this is a frequent friction point. The city of Detroit must approve all change order requests in writing, regardless of who's funding the change. If it's part of the project, we've got to be part of the approval. City of Detroit HRD must receive and approve a fully executed copy of each contractor payment application draw request, regardless, again, of who's funding that particular draw. The City of Detroit specific draw documentation is required for all draw requests, again, regardless of funding source. So each and every time you prepare a payment request, excuse me for just 1 minute. Okay, I'm back at City of Detroit specific draw document is required for all draw requests, regardless of funding source. Documents are to be packaged and submitted per document checklist instructions. There is an actual criteria, a list of how those documents should be submitted, and it's important that you do that. Special notes, I just did that. Why is it not working? Here we go. On to Build America, Buy America, BABA section. What is BABA? Larry did a good job of describing that. It's the Build America, Buy America Act, enacted as part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of November 2021. This preference is what it's called, a preference, because it can't be a full mandate, but it's close. And it mandates that certain materials used in federally funded infrastructures must be produced in the United States. Federally assisted multifamily housing projects undergoing renovation and or new construction projects have been determined to meet the federal definition for fully federally funded infrastructure projects. HUD has implemented BABA requirements for community development block grant and home investment partnership program funds through a phased approach. What they did is they started out with the fiscal year's funding, and initially the funding only related to iron and steel and specifically covered materials. But as the years have gone on now the funding years, and you can count on your project being required to meet all of these. You'll have to meet all of the requirements, which include modified, manufactured products. Compliance, how do you comply with this? The BABA Act requires that all iron, steel, specifically listed construction materials and manufactured products used in federally funded infrastructure projects, AKA multifamily housing, must be produced in the United States. And again, CDBG and home grants, in addition to underfunding, can trigger this. The way you comply first is you determine applicability, and we'll help you with that, because you may not know what year funding that you're going to receive, but we will, and at that time we'll notify you of compliance requirements. Understand covered materials. Covered materials include iron and steel, construction materials, lumber, drywall, pipe, glass, etc., wiring, and then manufactured products, which is the most difficult to comply with. That would be HVAC units, appliances, light fixtures, things like that. This Act requires that you use domestic products and that you ensure that all covered materials are produced in the U.S., including all manufacturing processes, that you maintain documentation, you collect manufacturer certifications, original statements, and invoices to prove compliance. Request a waiver if needed. This is the tricky one. Do not plan to receive a waiver short of potentially the de minimis waiver, which I'll go into later. That's still possible, but the reason I say that is because we don't have the ability to grant those waivers in-house. That's something that only HUD could grant. And that seems to me, at least, to be a long, drawn-out process that I don't fully understand at this stage. But coordinate early. You want to discuss your procurement plans and your material sourcing with your project contact early in the design and budgeting process. I should say GC. Now, the general de minimis waiver. What this waiver does is, this is something that HUD has recognized that there may be instances, particularly early on in the application, that certain materials or manufactured products in particular are not produced in the United States, or that the amount produced is insufficient due to time or cost to make them reasonable. So they've issued this general de minimis waiver, and they've issued it to everybody. And once issued by HUD, it applies to all projects as long as you can prove your project qualifies under its terms. And here are the terms that you must comply with. You must document your project meets the waiver conditions, in particular that the total cost of non-compliant items is 5% or less of total covered material costs. The waiver is applied only to iron, steel, and manufactured products. Specifically listed materials are excluded from this waiver because they're readily available and the cost is not prohibited. Things like lumber, drywall, wiring, these are all things that are produced and readily available in the United States. De minimis waiver applicability and compliance is documenting less than or equal to 5% enough to ensure compliance. It is, again, if properly documented. And how you do that is you want to determine the total cost of all BABA covered materials, iron, steel, manufactured products, construction materials. Each of those have a cost. Whether you as a contractor purchasing or your subcontractors, you're going to need to track those costs. You want to list all non-compliant items used in the project. We have documentation available for you. I'll go into in just a short while. the aggregate cost of all these non-compliant items, that is the amount that shows that you either do or do not meet the de minimis waiver calculation of 5 or less percent. I include, you must reference HUD's general applicability waiver, but we'll do that for you. If you can document that your project is eligible to receive it, then we'll be the ones who do that for you. The document that we use and you will use to help you guide you through this process is the Build America, Buy America material spreadsheet. It's an Excel document that allows you to track all covered materials. You can list and we can track the type of supporting documentation you've included, whether it be manufacturer certification, letters, whatever the means to certify compliance are, we'll document those as well. And then the cost of materials, both certified and non-certified. We have compliance documentation. Again, we've anticipated the need and created documentation that helps us all prove compliance, or in the case of not compliant material, whether or not it meets the standard. In those documents are the project specific BABA covered materials compliance notification checklist. That's a $10 word sentence there. What that is in short is it's a form that I'll show you when I'm done explaining here. This where we'll prepare this document and submit it to you at the appropriate time from the appropriate staff that outlines what the requirements are for your specific project. Because again, depending on the funding you receive, it may trigger different compliance criteria. So we'll identify those for you and provide that to you. The Build America, Buy America materials tracking spreadsheet. This is the document I mentioned. It's Excel, it's self-calculating, and this is how you track it. And we'll communicate this information back and forth month to month as the draws progress and so do the materials. This is how, again, that you'll establish that you do or don't meet the de minimis waiver. So we've got projects under contract now where we're going through this, and it's been there's a lot of due diligence required, but it's manageable, and it's much less. I think I can say that. It's much less scary in practice than it is in just being exposed to it for the first time. But that's to be determined based on what you encounter. We also require that the contractor and or subcontractor self-certify that the materials that are included in the draw package or for the project, that those are in compliance. So that's kind of a backup certification. We have the documentation. You show us the document, you show us the certifications required, and then at the end of the day, the contractor and the sub says, yes, these are materials I used and I certify them as compliant. And I believe I went through that 25-minute presentation much faster than 25 minutes. I hope so. Here is the covered materials compliance notification checklist. Again, this is, you may not be able to read it, it's small, but this is the document that we'll prepare for you and submit as part of probably your award, so that you know for certain which materials are covered. This here lists the types of materials that may be covered with an explanation of what they include, not a definitive explanation, but a general guidance of the types of materials. And it shows materials categories, manufactured products, specifically listed materials, and non-ferrous metals, etc. And at the end of this, we'll submit this to you so you understand. Here, in my opinion, is the most important document. This is the one that will guide all of your efforts and ours in determining compliance with the general requirements and, if needed, any waivers that are granted. Again, it's hard to see, and you'll have access to these documents as documents and the presentation itself, so that you can have time to digest those, and then you can always get back to me with questions. I'd be happy to answer them after you've had a time to take a good look at this. But again, this tracks the type of material, the type of support documentation and certification, the cost of the material, and then whether it's compliant or non-compliant. And at the bottom, it self-totals. And at some point, you'll realize that either you don't need to worry about a de minimis waiver, or that you should have already called me so we can work out the details of that. Again, this is just the second page of that. Here is the BABA contractor, subcontractor, self-certification form. It's just a bunch of legalese saying at the end of the day that yes, we certified the materials we supplied are in BABA compliance. And I believe that is the end. Again, I'll be around for questions and answers, hopefully answers to every question. But if not, I can let you know that I will get back with you. If you have any particular difficult questions that I can't answer fully, you'll get a response. Stop sharing and turn it back over to the next presenter.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Sure.
Thanks, Mike. So just before we have the next presentation, just to note that the next group that's going to present is members from our asset management team is going to talk about the continuing obligations. As we mentioned, this is for affordable housing. We want to make sure that as part of your loan agreement, you will also be entering into a housing affordability restriction agreement for the property. That's actually a recorded document that's recorded against the land, if you will, or the property. That continues even if your loan is repaid. The commitment for the affordable housing continues. And the next team, as I mentioned, the asset management team, is throughout the loan period, the 35 years, 40, 50, however long your loan period is, there's a monitoring to make sure that the affordability commitments that you made are being adhered to. And if not, it would be a default of your loan agreement and require repayment of that loan. So I'll turn it over to the team who's going to present and talk about the ongoing obligations.
Thanks, Larry. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Noah Kafaji, Senior Asset Manager. My team is going to go through the asset management portion of this presentation. I'm going to let the presenters introduce themselves, but LaDonna, could you please pull up the presentation so we can get started?
Hello, everyone. My name is LaDonna, and I will be navigating the slides for you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Hilda Motley, and I'm representing the asset management team with Housing and Revitalization. And we'll be reviewing asset management's role and general purpose, along with a brief overview of continuing obligations of city-funded projects and resources. So I'll get started with the general overview of the purpose of the asset management team. And we monitor all housing and mixed-use projects that are funded with proceeds from the following HUB programs: home investment partnerships, community development block grants, neighborhood stabilization, and Section 108 loan guarantee. And also, we review community housing development organizations that have existing city-funded projects to ensure that they have been performing well financially over the last couple of years with the liquidity, their reserves, and future financial commitments to continue to operate successfully in the future. And now I'll turn it over to the next one.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mahira. I'm an asset manager with the asset management team, and I'll be going over the continuing obligations of city-funded projects. So all housing projects funded by the city with proceeds from HUD programs must meet the following in order to be considered in good standing with the asset management team. So projects must maintain all requirements during its compliance period with HUD, and this includes annual income certifications, verifying that all home NSP CDBG units are leased to households that are low to moderate income, as defined by HUD. This is typically no greater than 50 to 80% of area median income. All units must pass physical inspections, including meeting all emergency health and safety standards. LaDonna, could we go to the next slide? So for CHODOs are private nonprofit organizations that must continue to meet all CHODO requirements as described in 24 CFR and 92 subpart G. The same as with other individual city-funded projects, CHODOs must demonstrate financial stability. The city must reserve not less than 15% of the home allocation for investment only in housing to be owned, developed, or sponsored by CHODOs. The city must also certify that the organization meets the definition of a CHODO. In addition, the city must document that the organization has the capacity to own, develop, or sponsor housing each time it commits funds to an organization.
And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Turner. I'm also an asset manager with the Housing Revitalization Department. I'll be going over the resources that the asset management team that you can use with the asset management team. Payments of home, CDBG, ARPA, and NSP funded projects should be sent to the city's loan servicer, Mino Lending Solutions. We do have the contact information, Chad, with his phone number and also email included within this PowerPoint. Documentations verifying household incomes of each home NSP CDBG assisted unit should be sent to National Consulting Services Incorporated. We have our contact, Rebecca Staniak, with her contact information listed as well. Questions regarding CHODO recertifications or existing loan documents between the city and borrowing entities can be sent to any of the asset managers included who have introduced themselves, Nora, Hilda, myself, LaDonna, or Mahira. Any and all other questions can be sent to Kyle, our Director of Preservation and Asset Management. All of our emails and contact information is included on this PowerPoint as well. I believe that is it for the resources.
Yep, that concludes the asset management portion of this presentation.
Okay, thank you. The next presenter is going to be talking about our Detroit Home Connect website. As part of the commitment of our funds, the development is also committing that units, the affordable units for the property, when they become available and at the time of your initial lease up, that they're posted to the Detroit Home Connect website so that residents in the community have a place to go and identify where there's any affordable housing units available within the city to find housing if they're in need of affordable housing. Just a quick note before I turn it over to Cynthia to talk about this. I just want to note that we've also implemented a newer process for projects that once the project reaches 50% completion, construction completion, we're now having a sort of a transition meeting or a handoff meeting to engage with both the asset management team and the Detroit Home Connect team to make sure that as you're beginning lease up, that we're making sure that the residents, we're getting the documentation to support the affordability of the households or the qualifications of the households moving into the affordable units, and that the units are being recorded on the Detroit Home Connect website. We're trying to make sure that we're getting there early, and at 50% completion is probably about the time you're starting to think about your lease up activities and things like that. So we want to make sure that we're all engaged and making sure that we're processing that transition a little bit more smoothly going forward. So with that, I will turn it over to Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Larry. I appreciate that. If Lolita, you want to share your screen for me? Thank you. All right. So my name again is Cynthia Elmore June. I am our division manager for housing navigation and inventory management work, and I oversee the Detroit Home Connect project alongside my colleague, Ms. Lolita Fox. I'll give her opportunity as well to introduce herself.
Can you all hear me? Good afternoon.
Yes.
My name is Lolita Fox. I'm the Tenant Resources Manager with HRD, and I manage the Detroit Home Connect website, and I also provide support, resources, and training to our development and property management partners as well as residents.
Thank you. Perfect. All right, so we'll jump right in. So again, Detroit Home Connect, as Larry was mentioning, is really that one shop fits all in terms of our affordable resources that we have out for the community. So we really want to be able to assist you guys in free marketing services, as well as just being able to have the information accessible for the community residents that are looking for affordable housing. So HRD, in partnership with Google and Exergy, work diligently with our property management partners to really develop the Detroit Home Connect website. We launched in May 2022. And just some of the milestones I'll touch on is, talking about our published profiles. So we have over 175 published profiles, and we have over 6,000 residents that have subscribed to receive updates via the Detroit Home Connect site. So anytime there's a new leasing or a new a new development that is going live, residents also, they receive notice. So again, our reach is pretty broad. Residents that are looking for affordable housing opportunities can visit the website and search for multiple properties, as well as, again, view the upcoming opportunities in the development pipeline. Each profile provides the units, building information, as well as just the basic resident selection criteria, such as like the income, some of the, other screening requirements that most of the time when you guys are leasing up, that you guys look for. And I'm
So-
pulling it over.
Thanks, Cynthia. So prior to closing, you'll be provided with the new development form, and that will be provided by a member of the HRD staff. And pretty much on that new development form, we'll be collecting pertinent information related to the development. So we'll create a profile, and once that profile is created, a member of the Detroit Home Connect team will reach out to you via email to set up a meeting to review the profile. So we're just going to make sure that all the information is accurate. We have renderings and photos of the development so that we can advertise your property on Home Connect, and then we'll publish the profile, and at that point, it will be visible to the public. So once that property profile is completed, and your development has been placed in service, you're all leased up, you will be considered or added to the existing development pipeline. So we ask that you or a member of your property staff or your property management agent make sure that the profiles are updated and the information is current and accurate, because you have to remember this information is being advertised to the public, and we want to make sure that prospective residents have as much information as possible prior to contacting the property. We want to make sure that they are informed about what your availability is, as well as contact information, office hours, and things of that nature. We also ask that when your property has availability, that you notify us as soon as possible. And what we'll do is we'll send out a now leasing announcement via the City of Detroit's Gov delivery system. And as Cynthia mentioned earlier, we have over 6,000 residents that have subscribed to receive notifications via Gov delivery for Detroit Home Connect. So it's a valuable marketing resource that we encourage you all to take full advantage of. We also are pleased to announce that we're launching a common application next month. Currently, the current experience that residents and our partners have reported having, and I can attest to this myself, having previously worked in property management, that there's really not a centralized place for residents to apply to multiple affordable housing opportunities. So we've had residents complain, and some of our property management and development partners complain about the cost of application fees and just the the burden of submitting multiple applications to multiple sites. And then also residents, their knowledge of when opportunities become available, or even that a property is even open for leasing, they're really not abreast to that and when that's happening. And then also the leasing staff has to sort through ineligible prospects to identify qualified applicants. And of course, that can be a burden, and a lot of staffs just don't have the bandwidth to keep up with that responsibility as they should. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, the costly application fees. It's really, just a lot of residents have complained about that. So that's the current experience that residents have. With the common application, we hope to generalize the work involved in processing an application. Residents will have the ability to apply for multiple opportunities via the website, so they can apply on their phone or from the comfort of their home. And then again, the pre-application does not replace your existing application process, because we know affordable properties have compliance requirements. So the common application is just a pre-application. So it pre-screens applicants. It obtains household composition information, as well as income and just basic information that you need to determine if a person qualifies. So the goal of the common application is to support residents in making sure that the leasing process is more equitable and increase access to affordable housing options. We want to make sure that individuals, it's just easy to apply for affordable housing, and then they're able to go to one place, one website to identify available affordable housing options. And we want to support our property management partners by assisting them in cutting down the application processing time by pre-screening applicants. And then we're supporting our developers by reducing the initial lease-up costs for new developments, because we know that those marketing expenses can be costly. So again, this is a free resource. And again, we encourage you all to take full advantage of it. So if you have any questions related to leasing, general property updates, or technical issues with using Detroit Home Connect, we ask that you please reach out. The email is listed here. And then if you have any compliance questions, or if you would like to participate in the common application pilot, please contact me, and my contact information is listed here. And thank you all for listening. I'll pass it back over to Larry.
Thanks, Lolita and Cynthia. All right, yeah, it's a free resource, and it's a great opportunity to fill your units as quickly as possible. So definitely, and it's a requirement of your loan doc. So please make sure you're coordinating with that quickly. I will also just wanted to mention that, and Lolita and Cynthia, I want to maybe, I don't know that we've talked about this, or I just don't want to misstate anything, but we've also heard the developers' comments about accessible, like identifying residents that would qualify for accessible units, because we hear from the community that the community is always looking for more accessible units. City council is focused on more fully accessible units. We have points in our NOFA for more accessible units, and then we've also received feedback from the development team sometimes that they're challenged with identifying residents that need the accessible units, and they end up leasing the units sometimes to households that don't need all the accessibility components. So it's something that we've talked about, and I think it's something that you can designate on the Home Connect site, but if not, it's something we want to work on, making sure we make a connection for that. So.
Yeah, Larry, we're currently in the process of identifying preferences as it relates to the accessible units, and making sure that our development and property management partners are leasing those units to, individuals that need those units, that qualify for them. So that's something that we're in the process of developing, but it is in the works. it's in the works.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That was a surprise comment. So thank you for just sort of jumping in on that quickly, Lily and Cynthia. All right. So we will move on to the last presenter before we get to our last Q&A session. And Elena's going to go through this is very important section on how to use the neighborly application process that we have now for this NOFA. So Elena, I will turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Larry. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elena Peterson. I'm a project manager here with HRD, and I'm going to be walking you through the Neighborly portal, which again is where you will be submitting your NOFA application. So to start, we have the address URL linked at the top, which is what you're going to click on to access Neighborly. If you have already created an account with Neighborly, then you simply just click on that URL, brings you to this login screen. You enter in your email address and your password. If it's your first time logging into Neighborly, then you're going to need to sign up and create a password. So to do that, you're going to click the Sign Up Now link. You will then follow the prompts to send and receive a verification code to your email address, and then you'll be able to create a password and log in. I will note that Neighborly is being utilized by the department for other programs as well. So examples include tax abatements, our pilot program. To apply to either of those, you will do that through Neighborly as well. So if you have already created a Neighborly account to apply for any of those programs, again, you don't need to create an account specific for the Affordable Housing NOFA. You just create an account generally for Detroit's portal on Neighborly. So again, if you've previously applied to a program through Neighborly, then you would already have an account. If not, then you go ahead and click the Sign Up Now and follow those prompts to create your password. The last thing to note on this login page is that in the lower right-hand corner, you will see that there is a question mark with the words technical support. This is what you're going to click on if you are ever experiencing technical issues with Neighborly software. Think of you need to reset your password, which for that you can also click the link above that says forgot your password, but other things such as you're locked out of your account, you're experiencing any type of errors, etc., that all can be identified and submitted by clicking on this technical support button. And then the Neighborly technical support team will respond to that and get you resolution. So again, that technical support is located on the login page. Okay, so once you create your password and then you log in, you're going to arrive on the main page or the dashboard. As I mentioned, we at the City of Detroit Housing and Revitalization Department are utilizing Neighborly for applications for a number of programs. So when you come to this page, you are going to look for the Affordable Housing NOFA program. And then you are going to click the blue button, Start Application, in that same row. So I will just note here that we recently did change the name of what we called this program within Neighborly. It was previously called Housing Rehabilitation and Development Program. We found that users were getting confused between a number of our programs, so we have since retitled it Affordable Housing NOFA. So again, when you come to this main page, that's what you're going to be looking for, Affordable Housing NOFA, and then you're going to click that Start Application button to the right. Once you click Start Application, you're going to type in the project name, and then that is going to bring you to the application itself. When you first land on this page, want you to take note of the case ID. That's what you see in the red circle there. The case ID is a 5-digit number. This is unique to every individual application or case, and therefore it's a pretty important reference point for in the future if ever you're communicating with HRD staff and you need to reference your particular application. One of the easiest ways to do that is utilizing this 5-digit case ID. So again, just want to call that out. Otherwise, when you land on this page, you're simply going to click the click here to continue button, and that's going to take you through the application. So you will see that there are a number of application sections, which are all listed on the left in your left-hand navigation, and you're just going to work through page by page until you complete them all. I also want to call out that at the bottom of each individual section or page, you'll see two buttons, a save button and a complete and continue button. The save button, as it suggests, is just to save your progress. So you should hit this as you're working through the page. But you're hitting save, meaning that you're not completely done with the page. You're just saving your progress and you plan to come back and continue working on the page. When you have completely finished the page, you've answered all the questions, you've uploaded all the required documents, etc., then you're going to hit the complete and continue button. That signals that you have finished this page or this section. And when you hit that button, you'll notice that you will then, over on the left-hand navigation, get a check mark for that section. You'll also notice that when you hit the complete and continue button for that page or that section, it's going to turn it into read-only mode. So your questions or fields will be grayed out and you won't be able to edit them for the moment. Once you hit the complete and continue button, however, if you then were to scroll down to the button, you would see that in place of that save and complete and continue button, there is now a reopen button. And so if you ever need to go back to a page and edit your responses, you would simply just click that reopen button and it would change the page back to edit mode, and you could make any edits to your questions or uploaded documents. You would then, after those edits are made, just need to re-click the complete and continue button so that you can get that check again next to that section. So as I mentioned, you're going to work through all of the pages or sections that you see in that left-hand navigation and hitting the complete and continue buttons as you finish each of those pages. Again, the complete and continue button is what is going to give you that check mark next to that section. You need check marks next to all of the sections in order to be able to click on the submit page. So if you've answered all the questions, done everything you think you need to do, and you're not able to click on that submit page, it's because somewhere along the line you're missing a check mark. So just look to see where you don't have the check mark, go back to that page, and just be sure to hit the complete and continue button. Again, you can only click on the submit button, you can only click on the submit page if you have check marks next to all of your sections. So at that point, you click on the submit page. As you can see here, there are a number of attestations that you're going to need to read and check off to acknowledge that you've read them and you will adhere to them. And then you will finish the prompts at the bottom of the page for signature. So finish all the check boxes, marking that you've read off and attested to everything. You're going to, as I mentioned, complete the fields for signature, and then to submit the application, you're going to hit that blue complete and submit button. One thing to call out is that, as I mentioned, even if you have hit the complete and continue button on the pages, you have that reopen button to go back and edit. Once you've submitted your application, you no longer have that option. So once you hit complete and submit, you can no longer go back and edit any pages. That only exists as a functionality prior to submitting. Another thing to call out is that this is a rather lengthy application, so you likely won't complete it all in one sitting. So if you exit out and are returning to Neighborly to continue an application, you're going to find that under the continue and existing application section. So you won't scroll down and hit the start application button because you've already started one. So to resume working on a application you've already started, you're going to look for that continue an existing application section. You're going to see the case. So just be mindful, again, as I mentioned, if for whatever reason you're submitting applications to multiple programs. Maybe you're also applying to the pilot program for a different project or to tax abatements. Under the continue and existing application section, you're going to look for, again, the what is now called Affordable Housing NOFA program. And then you're going to click that view application. That's going to bring you back into the application, and then you can continue on with your remaining sections. Lastly, some tips and tricks as you're working with Neighborly. So please be sure to click the save button frequently on your pages as you're working through the application. Neighborly is not an auto-save platform, which means if you were to leave your browser or leave a page before saving your work, you're going to lose that progress because you didn't hit save. So I recommend that you hit save frequently. If you've been working on a page for a while and you haven't hit the save button in, say, the last 10 minutes or so, just scroll down to the bottom, hit save so that you're ensuring that you're saving your progress as you go along. I already called this out, but again, want to highlight that you cannot edit your application after you submit it. Before you submit it, you always have the option to hit that reopen button at the bottom of a page to go back and edit your responses. You lose that ability after you submit your application. The application must be submitted by September 2nd at 11:59 p.m. And then Larry already called this out, but do recommend that if you didn't attend, or even if you did, that you go back and watch the recording of the pre-submission public meeting. I went much more in detail in terms of the functionality of Neighborly and kind of walking through what it would look like to submit an application. So if you're looking for more detail, please go back and reference that recording. It's on the HRD website. And then lastly, again, want to call out that we did decide to change the name of this program within Neighborly itself. It was previously called Housing Rehabilitation and Development Program. It's now called Affordable Housing NOFA. No action needed if you previously started an application under the old name. Your application or case will simply update automatically. And that's it for me, so I will turn it back over to Larry.
Thank you, Elena. Just a note for everybody that Neighborly is the software system that the city will be using to manage the projects throughout our process. So the applications come in through Neighborly, but it's not just an application software. We will be using Neighborly, the underwriting team and the construction team and all the various teams, the environmental team will be using Neighborly to manage documents throughout the project, the life of the project. It will transition to asset management team also. So just keep in mind that you will be working within or be receiving email prompts to submit documents throughout the process via the Neighborly system. And that's where we will be warehousing most of the documents associated with your project. We will more than likely also have, and have them stored in a separate system also, just for the final versions, just to have a backup of them, all for HUD purposes and things. But they will all be housed in Neighborly. It's going to be our primary area of processing things going forward. So important to get set up in Neighborly. So thanks, Elena. All right. So with that, though, that's we've kind of reached the end of our presentations for today. We've got another Q&A session now, and the team will remain available until around 1 o'clock or so, unless we just have no questions and we see everybody dropping from the meeting. But if you have any questions now, please let us know on anything that we covered today. Let us know. And just, another quick reminder for everybody. If you have questions regarding the NOFA as you're doing anything, Neighborly, there'll be some prompts within the software to sort of help assist. There's some guidance within the software to help you with certain steps with the software specifically. But if you have questions with the NOFA, don't forget you should submit them by email to HRD NOFA, so HRD NOFA detroitmi.gov. And then somebody from the underwriting team, Naomi, or the team will manage those questions and get back to you with answers that can help with your applications, hopefully. So are there any questions on any of the information that we covered today? Specific and certainly on this last half of presentations. Hey, Lily.
Hi, Larry. How are you?
Good.
I have a quick question. I was going through the Neighborly application and the PDF version, and I didn't see a spot to upload the phase 1 report. But I saw the phase 1 mentioned in the application, so I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, there should be a spot. We can double check. We'll make a note and make sure that that's there. But that I'm not sure if the phase 1, Naomi, can you remind me, is that an initial application optional but a requirement for the commitment level? No, that I'm not sure with that. If you could, Naomi, may be able to remember that, but we'll look in and make sure you can absolutely submit it your phase 1 because we want you to. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll double check. Thanks, Lily. Dawn.
Thank you. Is there a way to connect several people to the current application? For example, if I start the application, but once we start closing, can I link somebody else that will take over that process and construction and all that as well?
I can take that one, Larry. Yes, you can add additional users to your Neighborly case. In the recording that I mentioned, the pre-submission public meeting, I went through exactly how to do that. So there's no limit in terms of the number of users you can add to a case. You're right, someone's obviously going to start it, and then that person can just add additional users. They're going to do that through the user module or user section that's listed on the left-hand navigation. So they would just click on that and then add the email addresses for the additional users. Those users then would still have to come into Neighborly and for the first time, click the sign up now, create a password. And then if they've been linked to the case, when they come to that main dashboard, they're going to look under the continue an existing application, and they should see that case that they can then access and work in as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Lily, I did look in the way that there'll be a second step. So for everybody, what we do is we get the initial applications, we review them for threshold. Those applications that pass threshold then move on to the scoring phase, and then there's a second set of documents that are required that are some items that take maybe a little bit more time to pull together, your market studies and some other things. But Lily, there is the phase 1 is part of the list of documents that comes in with the commitment level documents, deliverables. So that for those projects that pass threshold, there'll be a separate communication to them to notify them that they're moving forward to the scoring phase and that the commitment level document should be submitted. So I think I think you've got it all ready and you wanted to send it. I just don't think we're looking for it just yet automatically or right away. So. And Elena, yes, there was no way I was going to answer whatever you just answered. So thank you. Lily, I see your hand is still up. Did you still have do you have another question, or is it just up from before? Oh, there it goes. All right.
Sorry.
No worries. Aisling?
Hi, yeah, I was working in the Neighborly system and uploaded a document and then later realized that I hadn't used the proper naming convention and I couldn't figure out a way to remove the document once I had already uploaded it. I hadn't pressed save and continue or anything yet, but I was just wondering if it was possible to delete those documents.
Yes, so if you hover over that where the essentially upload link is, you should see that a red X populates, and then you can just click that and it'll delete it. And then you would be able to upload your new document.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Renita?
Yes, I had a question in regards to sources. So let's just say that you have all but one source to sort of fill the gap, but that application submission would not be until October, and that would be with another state entity. Would your application still be considered if that's still pending?
Yes. Yes. So if you're looking at you're applying for like either 4% or 9% tax credits or something, is that what you're referring to?
Let's just say it could be MISTA or MEDC funds.
Okay. Yeah, and so you're saying that it's sort of contingent. So the MISTA like tax credit funding amounts, we would, if you've got tax credits, or it depends if it's gap funding and things like that, right? So we kind of treat the MISTA funds, we count them as if you have them, because your entire application is contingent upon you receiving an award. For instance, if it's 9% or the 4%, gap round, the tax credit component of it, where it can.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be for light tech, but it would be for housing support.
Okay, it would be, what we can do is we can consider that you just put in your application that you're, because we have this a little bit all the time, right, Renee? Like there's a little bit of timing to line up with various funding sources because they're out there at different times and people needing to apply. But a project that previously was in a previous round and already has their award would score more points for already having that commitment than one that doesn't have it. It might not like make you not meet threshold if you say, and you put in your application to us saying, part of my funding is through, like you said, an MEDC program. I've been in communication with them, and if you had some type of communication from them to acknowledge that they've been talking with you about their program and recommending you apply to it or something, certainly include that with your application. But if you don't already have those funds, when we're looking at the percentage of funds committed and other things, if you look at the scoring, there's various scoring points for the commitment, what percentage of your other funding sources are already committed that you have in your capital stack. You would only receive the points for ones you actually have the commitment for, if you will.
Understood. I just wanted to confirm, like, you wouldn't be disqualified if you didn't have all your sources in play at the time of your application.
No, but we are looking for, like you say, we want to see something that it's real, right? That if you say you're going to have a permanent loan from, whatever bank you're saying, that we have something from that bank saying, yes, we've reviewed the project and we would anticipate it would qualify for X amount of loan. Like that, we want to know that we've got those type of firm commitments. But other ones that are subject to programs or application things and things like that, we understand that sometimes there's just a timing challenge.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Mike's got a question or a comment.
Not really a comment, Larry. I have a hard stop at 1, so I just wanted to say if anybody has a construction-related question, please bump it up.
Yeah.
So that I can address it before I have to drop.
Okay. Yeah, we're hoping to wrap by 1 o'clock, but if you're a little bit tight, if we can get any construction-related questions right away, that would be great in case Mike needs to transition to his other meeting. Okay, and again, now if you don't have any questions or you have other things to get to, you're free to leave whenever you like. But you're more than welcome to stay on just in case somebody has maybe the same question as you do. So. And Anisha.
Hello, how are you?
Great.
My question was, for those of us that are new, I did read that you also help emerging developers. I'm in the middle of a project, and this is my first time navigating any of this. And I was wondering, do you have any additional resources or referrals that we can use to get our team in place?
Yeah, have you been working with anyone from the public-private partnerships team
No, I have.
in HRD?
No, I have
Yeah,
not.
so
Go ahead.
yeah, no, yeah, that's usually your best contact right away when you're envisioning a project is to engage with somebody on the public-private partnership team.
Okay.
And we can, I don't know, Naomi, if you could maybe drop, hopefully Naomi's still on, if we could drop Jason Friedman's contact information into the chat. Danisha, you can, have you scheduled is your project far enough along where you scheduled like a pre-application review meeting yet or no?
No, by the time I got on there and actually looked at the pre-application qualifications, I
Yeah.
didn't have my performer, the one that they wanted
Okay.
specifically. I didn't have that performer ready. So I was unable to sign up for that. So now I scheduled, to get on this to see if I can catch up, even if I can fill out the application, even not getting on the pre-application qualification sheet. Like I said, I'm a new developer and I'm trying to navigate myself through this, but I am in the middle of a project that I know would qualify for this type of funding.
Okay. Yeah, and Naomi just put Jason. So Jason, and I was sort of pulling it up the back, thinking Naomi, I was trying to pull it up in the background too, or post it. So Jason Friedman is the director of the public-private partnerships team.
Okay.
And that team really is the team that assists developers who are looking to do a project in the city, and they sort of support with all of the steps to do your development, and they'll have thoughts on potential funding sources you may want to consider, how to get maybe support if you want to engage with a consultant. They might, we may have some consultants that help support developers in the city. So that if you reach out to Jason, he will put you in contact with somebody on his team that works in the region that you're planning to do the development. Jason's on. I didn't realize Jason was on. I didn't see you, Jason. So, but
Okay.
yeah, so he'll get you in contact. So
thank you so much.
Sure. As a reminder, well, or just so you know, if you are a participant in the meeting, you should receive a copy of the recording. We have been recording the entire presentation, so you should receive a copy of the presentation should appear in the chat. We will also work with our marketing and IT teams as we were able to put the public meeting on the HRD website. We will also work toward putting a recording of this meeting onto the website. I copied the slides. I think Naomi, there was a question in the chat earlier. Naomi responded to a copy of the slides will also be put on the HRD website for everybody to review or have for your needs. Another reminder that the applications final submission is Tuesday, September 2nd. So make sure you have confirmation that, and you're certain that your applications are fully submitted by that time. And of course, I think as you've heard throughout the presentation, start early on your applications. Don't wait till the last minute. There's a lot of information you need to provide. So please start early. All right, I think we're just about at 1 o'clock. Thank you to everybody who joined. Thank you to all the presenters today. Amazing as many presentations as we had that we literally ended exactly at, I think, 12:39 or 12:40 with the presentations. So everybody was right on schedule, and again, great presentations, a lot of great information. So if there are no more questions, I think Naomi, I believe you started the recording. If you could stop the recording, I think we will end the meeting today. And again, thank you to everybody who joined. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.